If you already own a home, there's a good chance you're sitting on one of the most powerful investing tools you have, and most people don't even realize it. That tool is called home equity. And in this video, I want to walk you through how home equity actually works, how people access it, and how investors commonly use it to acquire their next property, sometimes without selling the one they already own. This isn't about hype, it's not about shortcuts, it's about understanding leverage so you can decide whether this fits into your long-term plan. Before we get into it, let me introduce myself. My name is Casey. I've been an enrolled agent and educator for over 5 years, and I'm also a real estate investor. What I focus on now is helping people understand how taxes, financing, and real estate, how they all work together. Because when you understand how the system connects you guys, your decisions get a lot clearer. So what is home equity? At its simplest, home equity is the difference between what a property is worth and what's still owed on it. So if a home is worth $350,000 and the remaining mortgage balance is $240,000, that gap, $110,000, represents home equity. But equity isn't cash sitting in the checking account. It's potential, and potential can either work for you or against you, depending on how it's used. Now, equity grows in two main ways. One is appreciation. As property values rise over time, equity increases even if nothing else changes on the loan. The other thing is principal reduction. Every mortgage payment you make slightly lowers the mortgage balance, increasing your ownership stake. Now, when those two things happen together, equity builds quietly, which is why many long-term homeowners are surprised by how much leverage they actually have. Now, that equity number isn't fixed, you guys. It changes every single month. Every month, the home values change, and every month you make a mortgage payment. You guys, home equity can be determined in two ways. The first is by getting your home appraised, which is a snapshot of what your home is worth now. And the second is by actually listing your home for sale and negotiating a price that someone would actually pay for your home. I don't want you to think this is cash that you can tap into tomorrow, but there are ways to leverage it and build your wealth. So we've talked about what home equity is and how it's calculated. Let's now talk about a few ways you can access it. One option is a home equity loan. This is essentially a second mortgage for some or all of your home equity, and that sits on top of your existing one. You're approved for a specific amount, you receive that money as a lump sum, and you make fixed monthly payments over a set period of time, just like you do on the original mortgage. Now, this type of loan is most useful when you know exactly how much money you need and you plan to use it right away. There's a clear purpose, a clear amount, and a clear repayment structure. For example, let's say you own a home and you've built up equity over time. You're planning to purchase another property and you know you need about $75,000 for the down payment and the closing costs. Rather than selling your current home or trying to piece together funds from multiple sources, you apply for a home equity loan for that amount. And once the loan closes, the funds are available immediately. You can use them for the purchase, and from the beginning, you know exactly what your monthly payment will be. Now, that predictability can make planning easier, especially when you're already carrying a primary mortgage. The second option is a home equity line of credit, often called a HELOC. This works more like a revolving line of credit rather than a traditional loan. You're approved for a maximum amount, but you're not required to take all of that money up front. You only pay interest on the portion you actually use. A helpful way to think about a HELOC is like a credit card that's secured by your home. You have a credit limit, you can use as much or as little of it as you need, and your balance goes up when you draw from it, and it comes down when you pay it back. The big difference is that HELOC interest rates are typically much lower than credit card rates. To understand how this works in practice, imagine you're approved for a HELOC with a limit of $75,000. That doesn't mean $75,000 shows up in your bank account. It simply means that that amount is available to you if and when you need it. Let's say at first you don't need the full amount. You might only draw $20,000 to cover an immediate expense. For example, maybe a rental property needs a new roof sooner than expected. Rather than scrambling to come up with cash or putting a large expense on a high interest credit card, you draw $20,000 from the HELOC and you cover the roof. In that case, your monthly payment and interest are only based on the $20,000 you've used, not the full $75,000. The remaining $55,000 stays available for future use if something else comes up. So one of the main advantages of HELOC is flexibility, you guys. Because you're not required to take the money all at once, this option can work well when expenses are uncertain or spread out over time. Instead of borrowing more than you need, you can draw funds gradually and pay interest only on what's actually in use. That flexibility can make planning easier, especially when costs aren't predictable. Just like with a credit card, the key is understanding how the balance works and being intentional about how and when the line is used. Now, the third option is a cash out refinance. This works differently from a home equity loan or HELOC because instead of adding another loan, you're replacing your existing mortgage with a newer, larger one and taking the difference out as cash. In practical terms, the original mortgage is paid off, a new loan takes its place, and any amount above what you previously owed is what you receive. For example, let's say your current mortgage balance is $310,000. You need $70,000 as a down payment for a new rental property, and your home is currently valued at $480,000. If you refinance into a new mortgage for $380,000, the original loan is paid off and the remaining $70,000 comes to you as cash at closing. One reason this can make sense is simplicity. Instead of juggling multiple payments, interest rates, and due dates, everything is combined into one monthly mortgage payment. Now, for some people, having a single loan makes budgeting feel more straightforward. A cash out refinance can also be used for someone who wants to reorganize debt or change how their loans are structured. Rather than carrying a primary mortgage plus a separate loan or line of credit, all of the borrowing is consolidated into one place. There's also a fourth and final option, and it's the most straightforward one, and that's selling the home. I'm not saying go out and sell your home, but at some point you may be ready to move on. When you sell the property, your equity becomes real cash, you guys. The sales price is determined by the market, your remaining mortgage balance is paid off, and whatever is left over after your transaction costs is what you walk away with. For example, let's say you sell your home for $510,000 and your remaining mortgage balance is $290,000. After paying off the loan, covering real estate commissions, and handling closing costs, you might net somewhere around $100 and let's say $80,000, depending on the specifics of the sale. That money is no longer tied to the property. It's liquid, it's flexible, it's available to be used however you choose, whether that's purchasing another home, investing in a rental property, or simply repositioning your finances. So, what are the most common ways people use their home equity? Sometimes equity is used to transition into the next primary residence. Someone moves, but they want to keep the original property and turn it into a rental. They use that equity to help fund the next purchase. More often, equity is used to acquire an investment property while still keeping the original home. Now, this is my favorite strategy because that equity might fund a down payment, cover acquisition costs, or support improvements for, say, a duplex, a triplex, or something even bigger. You get renters in there that pay the mortgage and the expenses, which results in monthly cash flow. You now have a second stream of income combined with a second property that's also building equity, equity that can also be tapped into. Now, over time, this is how people scale, you guys, without resetting their progress each time. Equity is also used sometimes to pay off high interest consumer debt like credit cards or car loans by replacing that debt with long-term structured debt. And when done intentionally, this can smooth out cash flow, lower overall interest expenses, and simplify monthly obligations. Team, before we wrap this up, it's important to talk about the downsides of pulling too much equity, because this is where people can get into trouble if they're not thinking long term. The first risk is reduced flexibility. Every dollar of equity you pull out is equity you no longer have. And if home values decline and you need to sell or refinance later, having less equity can limit your options or force you to make decisions you wouldn't otherwise make. Let's say you want to sell your home in a few years, but real estate values have dropped. If your loan balance and home costs get close enough to each other, you may no longer have equity when you sell the home. You might even have to bring money to the table in order to close. Your second risk is your debt to income ratio. This is the relationship between how much you owe each month and how much income you bring in. And it's something lenders pay very close attention to, because when you receive the money, lenders are making sure you can make those monthly payments. Let's say you lose your job, but you still have to make those monthly payments, and it might be very challenging. Always be very mindful of what those payments will be so you don't put yourself into a poor financial situation. To bring this all together, let me walk you through a simple example of how someone might use home equity to buy an investment property in a thoughtful way. Let's say you owned your primary home for several years. It's now worth $450,000, and your remaining mortgage balance is $270,000. That means you've built up $180,000 in equity. And let's say you're interested in purchasing an investment property priced at $400,000, and you plan to put 20% down. That means you need $80,000 for the down payment, plus additional funds for closing costs and reserves. Instead of selling your home, you access $80,000 of your home equity, maybe a little bit more for the closing costs. You choose a structure where you know exactly what the new monthly payment will be, and you make sure it fits comfortably with your budget. Your primary home stays in place, and the new property is purchased as an investment. The rental income from that property is designed to support its own expenses while your primary home continues to build equity over time. Team, what makes this approach work is not the leverage itself, it's the planning behind it. You're not using all of your available equity. You're keeping your debt to income ratio in a reasonable range, and you're making sure the added payment doesn't put unnecessary strain on your cash flow. That's the real takeaway here. Home equity can be a powerful tool, but it's not something you use just because it's there. When it's used intentionally with clear numbers and realistic expectations, it can support long term goals without creating unnecessary risk. Understanding how these options work gives you clarity, and clarity is what allows you to make a calm, confident decision when the right opportunity comes along. So, the goal of this video wasn't to tell you to go pull equity or make a move right now. It was to help you understand what home equity actually is, how it works, and what your options are before you ever need to make a decision. Home equity can be a powerful tool, but it's not automatic and it's not risk-free. Whether you choose to use a home equity loan, a HELOC, a cash out refinance, or sell the property altogether, each option comes with trade-offs. What matters most is intention. Using equity because you understand the numbers and the risks is very different from just using it because it's available. When you take the time to think through the full picture, payments, debt to income, and downside scenarios, you put yourself in a much stronger position. And this is exactly the kind of decision-making framework we focus on in our real estate investing course, First Asset Academy. Not tactics, not hype, but understanding how financing, taxes, and real estate fit together so you can make a confident, informed choice. I've added a link in the description where you can book a free call with us. We'll walk you through your goals, look at how equity, cash flow, and financing would actually work for you, and help you make and decide what makes sense as far as buying a property. And team, if this video was helpful, make sure to click the subscribe button, drop any questions you have in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.